Hey guys, welcome back. 343 just dropped the newest Inside Infinite and my god, this is the biggest one yet by a long shot. There's so much information in here about new characters, species, there are tons of new campaign details, customization details, we get our first look at Infinite's Reach armor, and so much more. Let's waste no time and begin this bad boy. So let's start off with the character team, and there is so much juicy stuff in here. Starting out, they gave us the core pillars for designing Infinite's characters, the first of which was to create compelling AI combatants, which is done via both their aesthetic and also their gameplay. An AI's role should be clear, and each enemy should bring something different to combat, while also having variants within themselves, so an example of that would be the Brute Stalker versus the Brute Chieftain. And then the second pillar is player comprehension, which is addressed via aesthetic and gameplay elements as well. Players should understand what they're engaging and if one target should take priority over another on the battlefield. Player feedback should also help you understand if what you're doing to counter the enemy is actually effective or not. They said that Infinite being a spiritual reboot made it much easier for them to incorporate kind of classic legacy character designs like the ones that we see. And just real quick to define their interpretation of legacy, because to everyone legacy is kind of a different thing, it's subjective. They went with the sort of Halo 3 to Halo Reach timeframe for Legacy, so they took parts of the Halo 3 and Halo Reach aesthetic and then incorporated them into the Banished aesthetic, where they fit, and that's how we got Infinite's beautiful character design. They said that they wanted to go back to Legacy designs that made Halo characters, and I quote, iconic. I had to get that in there. They wanted the elites in particular to return to a more sleek look. They wanted them to be fast and agile and intelligent looking, which to many of us, they didn't look in Halo 4 and Halo 5. And speaking of elites, here we have our first proper render of a Halo Infinite Banished elite, and my god, this guy looks absolutely beautiful, sleek, agile, deadly, and most importantly, elite. Man, this makes me just even more excited to see the other elite ranks and variants in the game. Oh, this design is so good. It's like H2A, but kind of modified to be new looking. Oh, so good. Here we have a proper high quality look at the Marines in Halo Infinite, and I love this Marine design. The armor, the BDUs, the overall colors of the armor in the BDUs, the chest holstered flare gun, the thigh holstered Magnum? That's not a sidekick. That looks like the rear iron sight of a Magnum. Possibly, right? Anyway, these Marines look absolutely incredible. I gotta say, that Marine on the right, sporting a very like Halo Wars 1, Halo Wars 2 look, which are my actual second favourite Marines behind Combat Evolves, with the mask and the shades, just looks so damn good holding that BR-75. Oh, that is an almost perfect Marine design for me. I will always hold the CE Marines as number one. I love that design, but the Halo Wars 1 and Halo Wars 2, and I guess now to a degree, Halo Infinite Marine design is a close second. They look so good. One thing I'm really happy about is that we're not just getting the Reach Marines again, because at one point with the 2018 trailer, it was looking like we were just going to be getting like Reach Army Troopers / Marines, and I wasn't a fan of the designs in Reach at all. I didn't like the armor. I didn't think it looked particularly great. So I'm really happy to see that we're moving towards like a Halo Wars style design because, oh god, this Marine armor looks so good. Okay, moving back over to the Banished side, we have our first in-game look at Torvarus, a Banished Spartan killer. And I'm going to sound like a stuck rack in this video, not going to lie, but he looks absolutely incredible. You can see that he's holding what looks to be a detached scrap cannon, which is that kind of turret thing that they revealed last year in some concept art, which looks really, really cool. But the overall design for Torvarus is so good, man. They are nailing the Banished designs in this game. I love that 343 have also, like, retained the kind of Banished Uruk-hai-esque brute armor that was in some Halo Wars 2 concept art. That is possibly my favourite brute armor of all time, and seeing that come back in Infinite as a huge Halo and also Lord of the Rings fan, and how damn good it looks in the game as well, just makes me so happy. It's, oh god, Torvarus looks so good. I can't wait to see him in game. And on the topic of brutes, actually, they said that they wanted the brutes in Infinite to feel more visceral, which is something that they try to achieve via the way they attack you, how their armor can be shot off, and also their voiceover, among many other things. They're also kind of juxtaposed really well alongside the elites in both design and behavior. We're back to the elites actually being elite-like now, and the brutes being the brute ones instead of the elites being the brutes and the brutes not existing. It's cool to have that dichotomy back, and it's especially good given that their designs are so different now and they can play off of each other in the gameplay with their AI and the combat, and it's gonna be so good. Moving on, here we have the Brute Berserker, which is the rank of brute that tore that door open in the gameplay demo the other day. Now, this brute has a very cool design, as I said already in my last video. I love the mask and like the bladed van bracers and the color scheme, and this guy looks so good. But the description of this brute is kind of interesting. On Waypoint, they say, "Be warned, they are angry and they will charge." So maybe the Berserkers are the only variant of brute that go berserk now. I mean, it would be fitting given the name. If that's the case, I'm not a huge fan of that. I like the berserk kind of thing being a trait of all brutes, but I'm still looking forward to fighting these guys. They look really cool. Another Lord of the Rings reference, Berserker, if anyone gets that. Props to you. Definitely not intentional, but I'm going to take him where I can see him. But yeah, I'm really excited to see these guys in game alongside like all the other brute ranks and variants as well. That's one of the little things about Halo that I love so much, that each enemy has like many different variants and ranks and stuff that make them play differently and also look a lot different as well. So I'm looking forward to seeing the other variants of brutes in this game. But we can't talk about brutes without talking about the one and only Krieg. So, ladies and gentlemen, drum roll please. I introduce to you Krieg Evolved. Now, comparing this dude, the new Krieg, the glammed up Krieg, to 2020 Krieg is quite literally insane, right? And as well, 243 even say that Krieg has picked up a new hobby and has done quite well for himself. So, you know what? Good on you, lad. Good on you, Krieg. I'm happy to see that you've kind of turned yourself around. You've had a makeover, and you look damn good now, son. Here we have a new render of the pilot. I'll be honest, I haven't really got much to say here. Graphically, he looks really, really good, and I'm looking forward to seeing him in game. Okay, moving over to the gameplay side of the campaign and the characters and stuff. They said that AI behavior has been rebuilt from the ground up in most areas for Infinite, thanks to, obviously, the campaign being slightly different to your regular Halo campaign. Some examples of which are the fact that brutes also throw fusion coils back at you, alongside throwing grunts as well. They touch on the grapple and how that interacts with enemies. So the grapple will pull you to a brute, it will deflect off a hunter, and if you fire it at a jackal, it won't attach to it, but it will pop their shield to the side so you can hit them in the body, so it kind of stuns them in a way. They also said that another big AI evolution is that some of the smarter AI will upgrade their weapon where possible, so they'll go and pick one up off the floor, or off a weapon rack, or even off a grunt mule if it's better than the one they're holding. And speaking of the grunt mule, here we finally have an in-game shot, a good in-game shot of the grunt mule. Yes, we've seen this guy like a billion times in Mega Bloks form, which is no surprise. But here he is in-game. He's a mobile weapons crate, which is kind of cool, honestly. He's also wearing some pretty cool-looking banished grunt armor, which I like. Yeah, I like this dude. It's a cool new idea for a grunt variant. This is unlike any other grunt that we've had before, besides like the ones in Halo 2 that carry the turrets, I guess, but broadly speaking, this is a new kind of grunt, so it's going to be fun to see how they play in game. We also have a new render of Infinite's jackals as well. Now, I will say, Halo 4 and Halo 5's jackals were the only species redesign in that game that I actually liked, but the classic routine jackals will always be my favourite, so these guys make me so happy. The armor looks really Combat Evolved inspired, which I love. I love how like vibrant the colors seem to be on both the armor and the shield as well. In the gameplay of the day, they really seem to pop in the environment, which was great. Man, I love these guys. I can't wait to fight them, or in the case of this dude, get killed by them 745,000 times in 10 minutes on Legendary. It's going to be a blast. I can't wait for it. To the surprise of absolutely nobody, enemy variants, so ranks and colours, are returning in Halo Infinite. They said that they built all the characters in a modular fashion so they could mix and match and create large amounts of variance for each species. There's also going to be lots of variation within ranks as well. So, for example, some brute miners might have little armor, some might have lots of armor. They also said that color rank progression returns as well, again, to the surprise of nobody. And it's going to help distinguish, for example, the weaker brute miners from the stronger ones. So it appears there's actually going to be color variation within like single ranks now, which I don't think we've had before, which is cool. Okay, moving on to something that I am a big fan of, the Spartan Killers. They said that from the start of Infinite, they wanted to pursue more kind of boss and mini-boss type characters, which ended up turning into the Spartan Killers. Now, these Spartan Killers are an elite force of Banish that are capable of going toe-to-toe with a Spartan, but not just going toe-to-toe, actually winning as well. They said that when it came to their red and black colour scheme, apparently the A-Team, as in like I think it was an 80s show, the A-Team, were into the inspiration, which is kind of cool, I guess. I gotta say, GRAVEMINDS definitely listens to My Chemical Romance and draws Shadow the Hedgehog fan art in his spare time. I'm convinced, dude. I'm absolutely convinced. They also said that each Spartan killer is unique and has its own story and battle trophies, which is going to be rather interesting. Now, I've said it a billion times already, but I'm going to say it again, right? I'm sorry, I'm going to say it again. GRAVEMINDS looks so cool. The color scheme, the design of his armor, his weapons, his whole thesis of his character, the fact that he's like part cyborg. Oh, yes. A million times yes. Moving on to the Skimmers, they are one of the new enemies in the campaign, which to me kind of sounds like there may be more species that are yet to be revealed, which is really exciting. The Skimmers are mid-tier combatants, which means they're on the same level as, say, Jackals or higher-tier Grunts, and they're not actually fully flying enemies. They have hover packs that allow them to move around quickly and provide unique challenges for players on foot or in vehicles, and apparently they interact uniquely with vehicles, which is going to be rather interesting. They said as well that they're just beginning to scratch the surface of the mysteries Zeta Halo holds, and that includes enemies. Please let that be a very subtle reference to the Flood. I am begging you. Please. How many times do I have to beg? Please. Okay, so let's round out the character half of the video by taking a look at some iconic grunts. Now, I want to say that this grunt on the left is probably an ultra, and the grunt on the right is probably a minor. Man, I love the design of these guys so much. That ultra armor and helmet being sleek and white looks so cool. And then, of course, the classic triangular yellowy orange minor armor just looks so good, man. Oh, these grunters look so good. Every single Banish design so far in this game just looks so damn good. I can't wait to see more. They've absolutely nailed the character and enemy design so far in this game. Oh, I can't wait for this campaign, dude. Okay, moving on to the second half of this video, we have the UI and the UX, the user interface and the user experience. So, starting off, we have the two core pillars for the UI and the UX. Firstly, to empower users with inviting, engaging, and intelligible interactions. And then secondly, modern legacy. So Infinite needs to have a distinct contemporary visual signature that captures the lighter, more uplifting spirit of hope and allows it to stand on its own among the library of Halo experiences, yet also remain reverent to the legacy direction of UIs and stuff. Now, moving on to the HUD itself, they said that helmet geometry and grenades and weapons were moved out of the top corners, where they were in every other Halo game before, to the bottom corners, to reduce eye fatigue, cognitive load, and arena sweatiness, which apparently were serious issues called out by Halo 5 players. Now, I've gotta say, I've never personally heard a single person say that Halo 5's UI was why the game was sweaty. That wasn't why the game felt sweaty. Halo 5 was a sweaty game because it had like a billion different abilities that you had to keep track of, that had like 700 different bindings on your controller that you had to spam in combat and constantly be aware of the enemy players using. And also, it didn't have social playlists for God knows how long, and it had like no game modes or anything. There were many reasons why Halo 5 was a sweaty game. It was an ultra sweaty game, far too sweaty. I don't think the HUD was one of them, considering, broadly speaking, it was identical in its layout to every single Halo game that came before. They also said that they minimized the visual clutter on the screen to help players focus on the gameplay by moving everything into the bottom corners. But again, I've got to say, it did the complete opposite for me. I really don't like Infinite's HUD. I find it a lot trickier to navigate, especially in combat, to find the piece of information that I need, like in the heat of battle. I really don't like this HUD at all. I really wish there was a way that I could just change it back to the, like, it's not even a classic one, right? It's the Halo 1 to Halo 5 HUD, the Halo HUD. I really wish there was a way I could change it, because its layout just makes it harder for me to access the information that I need in combat, which is the opposite of what a HUD should do. Anyways, moving on, they said that balancing the HUD between multiplayer and campaign is, well, it's very different. Multiplayer has a heavy focus on at-a-glance information, so you need to be able to get the exact piece of information that you need when you want it immediately, whereas in campaign, the HUD is full of bespoke elements that make sense for the story, but not for the multiplayer, because obviously campaign is a bit more lenient in that sense. Some of these bespoke elements for the campaign include mission trackers, holographic terminal interfaces, suit firmware upgrades, a 3D map, archives, and assassination dossiers. More on that in a second. They then showed off a really cool GIF that shows how cutscenes actually integrate into the HUD, which is really immersive. I really like this. And building off of this, they talk about how guns, vehicles, menus, etc. all have a very similar aesthetic in terms of their UIs. Now this is a new thing called Visor OS, which is a grounded in-world aesthetic that connects all kind of UIs together and makes the experience more immersive. Like even in things like the menus, it always feels like you're navigating something within like your Mjolnir BIOS, for example, which I really like the sound of. They seem to have really fleshed out the concept of Visor in Infinite and how it works, what it looks like, what it integrates with, etc. And I really like this. I think this is going to make for a super immersive experience. They looked at how Chief would interact with the OS as almost an extension of his HUD, and then seemingly designed many elements of the UI, both in-game and also in the menus, with that in mind to keep it a consistent experience overall. A good example of this are the tabs in the menu for the campaign. Now, they wanted each tab to feel cohesive in the overall Visor experience and kind of look like something that Chief would access in his Mjolnir BIOS, and I think they do. So some of these tabs we have the TAC map, which is the map, the upgrades tab, which covers all the equipment and Mjolnir upgrades, the FOB tab, which covers all the available support items that you can get from FOBs, the targets tab, which is a dossier of high-value targets to take down, and the database tab, which is a compendium of narrative logs and other collectibles that you found in the world. And like I said, I really like how it seems like these are tabs that Chief would actually access within his Mjolnir. It's like a store of information in his Mjolnir BIOS or Visor, I guess, that really does feel like something that he, in-world, in-universe, would access on the battlefield, which is really cool. Okay, so moving over to customization. Now, the UI and UX team talk a lot in this article about all the things they went through when designing the Armor Hall and the customization UI. I highly recommend you guys go and check it out. But it's currently 2 AM, right? So in the interest of time, I've broken it down into all of the juicy details for you. So firstly, here we have a shot of Reach armors in-game, and my god, Infinite's versions of Reach armors look so good. Whew! Can't wait to try these bad boys out. Here we have a shot of the armor hall with multiple armor cores, and you can see in the back there, we have the iconic looking Yoroi armor. It's cool to see all these cores side by side. They said that tons of work went into designing the armor hall, which is really cool. I love the idea of the armor hall, honestly. Again, it makes the experience feel really cohesive, like an actual Spartan gearing up for combat. And that's one of the things they wanted to kind of achieve with the customization UIs. They wanted players to feel like a Spartan that was gearing up for combat, which, if you ask me, is something that they have absolutely succeeded in doing. In the background of the armor hall, there are Marines working on terminals, there are Pelicans queuing up, and also other things that are even callbacks to legacy fan favorites. Now, I'm not exactly sure what they mean by that, but when the game comes out, I am definitely going to keep an eye on the background of the UI to see some of those things, because I'm very curious. And they also said as well that these details will grow and evolve as new features are added to the space as well, so over time, the armor hall will get even cooler, which is pretty cool. They made a big effort to modernize manufacturer logos thanks to their integration in the game in Infinite, being far more than any previous Halo game, and I honestly really like this. It's a cool little detail, but it helps flesh out the world so much more and make you feel immersed in the world. Like when you're looking through the weapons and you can see the actual manufacturer logo of that weapon besides it, it's a small detail, but it's such a cool detail that for me really helps me get immersed. They said that it helps create an identity for the weapon and also for the manufacturers of the weapon in-universe and makes them kind of feel at home in the universe. They also wanted to identify deep lore within the community and bring it into plain view. Now, I'm not exactly sure what they mean by this in regards to weapon and manufacturer logos, but I'm curious. They also did extensive work branding and also adding detail to all of the weapons with like decals, logo prints, and loads of other details. And honestly, when you see like a blown up version like this of the weapons and the amount of detail that's on them, it is genuinely insane. And personally, I love this kind of thing. It makes all these weapons and their manufacturers feel like they actually exist. It makes the world feel cohesive and grounded, which is one of my favourite elements of Halo. Like, yeah, it's set 500 years in the future. Yes, there are space zombies and like portals and teleportation and stuff, right? But at the same time, the gear that at least humanity use feels like it could plausibly exist, and this just plays into that groundedness that I love so much. Oh, and each weapon also has its own logo now as well, which is really, really cool. And finally, for UI and UX, they said that the UI and the UX will evolve over time post-launch as new content is added. And so that brings us to the end of the customization section of this video and onto the final section. Words from the one and only Joe Staten. Super Soldier Base Assault. First, if you haven't watched the Halo Infinite campaign overview video, please do, especially the ransom keep sequence that begins at 3 minutes and 34 seconds, because that particular part really shows off how the character, UX, UI, and many other teams have joined forces to create a part of the Infinite campaign experience that feels classic and innovative at the same time. An experience that we call Super Soldier Base Assault. Sorry, I mean, and because it's 2 o'clock in the morning, I'm going to whisper this, Super Soldier Base Assault. You gotta lean into the movie trailer announcer voice because decimating fortified alien war bases truly is epic good fun. And here's why. Halo games have always been about freedom, and more specifically, the freedom to make interesting tactical choices to optimize your power projection inside a rich physical simulation. While previous Halo campaigns have been chock full of interesting choices, none have had a world simulation that comes close to Halo Infinite's. Specifically, banished bases like Ransom Keep aren't obstacles across a linear path. They don't have 1 or 2 or 3 avenues of attack. They are approachable from every cardinal direction, and often from above and below as well. They don't just have designer-crafted, pre-placed weapons and vehicles that encourage you to lean into a particular set of tactics. These mighty fortresses stand ready to repulse any arsenal that you choose to deploy against them. And that's actually pretty smart of the Banished, because super soldiers have many, many choices. These include equipment, and if you look at the sequence of the campaign overview video that begins at 4 minutes and 13 seconds, you'll see a glimpse of how Halo Infinite gives you more freedom than ever before to create your own personal Spartan combat style. Do you want to invest in your threat sensor to improve your reconnaissance capability before executing a stealthier base assault? Do you prefer to amp up your shield core to enable a more tank-like smash the gate and danger be damned approach? Maybe the grapple shot is your priority to maximize freedom of movement and manipulation of battlefield objects like fusion coils. All of these decisions and more are just fine by us, because Halo Infinite is a game that always does its best to say yes to you and to the choices you want to make. And that includes the choice to launch a perfectly good warthog full of newly liberated Marines safely off the side of a mountain. Joseph Staten, head of creative for Halo Infinite. Very cool, thank you very much, Joe, and also to everybody else on the UI UX team, on the character design team, and everyone else involved in this article. Pretty crazy to think that that is the penultimate Inside Infinite before launch. We've been doing this for like 9 months now, and I'm not gonna lie, time has kind of flown. Time has kind of flown, which, you know, happens when you're having fun. So I'm gonna stop rambling on now and end this because it's 2:30 in the morning and I've still got to edit this thing. So yeah, I'm gonna round this one out here. Thank you all so much for watching. I really do appreciate it, and I'll catch you all in the next one.